Hello, my name is Patrick Kelly. I'm the Director of Education at Stokes Nature Center up in Logan, Utah.
And I'm Michelle Sagers. I'm our Community Programs Coordinator here at the Stokes Nature Center. Today we are going to be talking about when, where, and how to tap maple trees.
Maple tapping is something you don't often think about here in the Intermountain West or in Utah, but it's very possible.
First thing you want to do is find a tree to tap. So today we're going to be tapping this box elder tree right behind me. So to identify a maple tree, you can tap anything in the maple genus, which includes box elder trees. You can actually also tap birch trees. You're not going to get quite as high of a sugar content in your sap if you're doing box elders, but we do have a lot of these here, so it's a great hobby to tap those box elder trees that you have in your front yard. So to identify, if you can identify it in the summer before the snow flies, that's great. A good tip though is to look for these Samara, these helicopter seeds that you see on all of our maple seeds. So we've got some of these still clinging to this box elder tree. If you're not able to find any of those, you can look at the buds. So they have paired buds. So if you just look and see those buds that are right across from each other, that will tell you it's in the maple genus. Our next step, you need to make sure that your tree is large enough to tap. So you can tap any tree that has a 10-inch diameter or larger. So we'll measure our tree here really quick, and it looks like we're at about 17 inches, so we are good to tap this guy. You can do one tap in a tree that's 10 inches, between 10 and 18 inches. If it's over 18 inches, you can do up to 2 taps. And if you get a really monster tree that's bigger than 28 inches across in diameter, you can do up to 3 taps in a tree. You don't ever want to do more than 3 taps. So we found our tree. We know it's big enough. We got to determine where to put the tap in the tree. So generally, you want to go about 2 to 4 feet above the ground to place your tap. And the south-facing side of the tree is usually best. That's going to receive the first sunlight in the morning, and sap's going to run the longest there. When do you actually want to start tapping is another good question. So you want to tap when the nights are still below freezing, but your days are above freezing. That's what causes our sap to flow. So, and then you're just going to look at your tree. You want to look and see if you have any scarring from previous year's tap holes. If I had another hole here, which I don't in this tree here, I would just want to make sure I am 6 inches away from previous year's tap holes. So we're going to go ahead in just a moment here and show you how to tap this tree, and we're going to go in right here and go ahead and tap this guy.
So you just need a few different tools to get started tapping your tree. The first thing you need is a drill or impact driver with a 5/16 bit, and that's going to be the pilot hole that your tap is going to eventually nest into. So like Michelle said, I'm going to go 2 to 4 feet up the tree, make sure I'm more than 6 inches away from any past taps, and go ahead and drill my hole. I want to make sure that it's parallel and even with the earth so that when I put my tap in there, that it doesn't tilt out or eventually slide out.
All right, so I'm going to show you how to use a bucket system. We do have 2 systems that we're going to show you today. So it's a really easy system. If you are taking one of our workshops with Stokes Nature Center this year, these systems come free with the workshop, but you can purchase these a number of places. You can even create your own if you don't want to purchase a bucket. I've seen people use old milk jugs or things and create their own system. But this is a really convenient, easy system to use. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and slide our plastic spile. You can see it's got a hook on the end. I'm going to tilt it so it's that way. And we're going to go ahead and slide this into the pilot hole that Patrick made for us. And I like to just kind of twist it, make sure it's in there nice and snug. And then the sled, you'll notice, has a metal pin here that slides in and out. So I'm going to slide this pin out until this middle is open, and there's a hole in the top of our spile that this will slide right on through. So just line that up, slide that all the way through, and then tilt that pin up so it locks. Then I go ahead, take my bucket. You can see there's a hole in the back of my bucket that'll hang right here on this hook. My lid's gonna cover it. That's gonna help prevent rain, snowfall, dirt, and other debris from getting into my sap.
So the second system I'm going to be showing you is the bag system. So the bucket system is definitely the more traditional, but the bag system is gaining more steam. So with the bag system, we also have a spile. This one though is metal, as you can see here. So with these metal spiles, they are safe to drive in with a hammer, and I like to drive it in just because I like it to be snug, like Michelle was saying. So I'll use that same pilot hole. I'll just nest it a little bit and then hammer it in. And then with our bag system, we have a few different components. We have the lid, which we'll get to in a minute. We have this frame, and we have the bag. And basically, you're gonna put the bag over the frame like you would a trash bag in your trash can. So I'm just gonna nest it through. And then wrap the plastic over that rim. Then I'm going to take our top, as you can see here, and there are little slats that run through the center of this top. So I'm going to nest the edges on the bag on those slats. And there it is, nice and nested, nice and taut. And then, just like Michelle was using with the bucket, I'm going to use this hole on the top here to nest on the spile that's already driven in the tree. And this system will also catch sap for you. It'll fill this bag. A benefit of this system is it's a little bit lighter. You're not having to carry as many buckets. And sometimes the top can be more efficient than the top on the bucket. But it just doesn't oftentimes have that traditional feel. So it's whichever you value most in your system.
Once you collect your sap, you're gonna wanna store it. So I like to collect my sap from, whether it's your bag or your bucket, every 2 to 3 days. And then you can keep it in the fridge for 4 to 5 days. If you're storing it longer than that, you probably wanna freeze it. A single tap can yield between 5 to 15 gallons of sap a season. So you're probably gonna wanna store that sap up till the end of the season until you have enough to actually boil down into your finished product or whatever it is you're wanting to do with your sap. Our trees here, if you're tapping a box elder tree like we did, it takes about 60 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup. If you're lucky enough to find a sugar maple, it's only about 40 gallons. So multiple taps is beneficial, and you are going to want to find a way to store that sap until you're ready to make that finished product.
So before you go out and just tap any old tree, you should know whose land you're on or who's managing that land and the rules and regulations in terms of tapping trees on that land. The best place to tap trees in terms of the legality is your own land, because you get to determine what happens to those trees on your land. Other places to tap could be a neighbor's yard or another private piece of property. You always want to get permission from that property holder before setting up taps on that land. In terms of tapping in areas that are owned either by a city, county, the state government, or the federal government, like here in the National Forest, you always need to get permission from whichever agency is managing that land, because oftentimes the regulations will vary widely from area to area, and there could be exclusive zones where there's no tapping allowed at all, like in wilderness zones or other managed groves of trees. So always figure out whose land it is and get permission prior to setting up your taps. It's always better to ask for permission than for forgiveness.
Once you have your sap all collected, you can go ahead and boil that down into syrup. Like I mentioned before, it does take a lot of sap to make syrup. But syrup is great not only for pancakes, but to cook with. It's very nutritional. You could also boil it down past that point of syrup to make maple sugar. Again, though, it does take a lot of sap to do that, so you're going to want to save up that sap for quite some time before you go through the effort to do that. It's best to boil down your sap if you can outdoors where you have a lot of ventilation. Patrick, I know you had some other ideas for products with maple sap.
Yes, so every year I only tap about 2 or 3 trees and I never get 60 gallons of sap because, well, you need a lot more trees to do that. So there's a variety of alternative products you can make with maple sap. So the first product you can make is just raw maple sap. This is sold commercially in some areas in the United States where it's filtered out and bottled, and it is delicious in my opinion to drink. It's a sugary water, and you know you're getting that life force right from the tree. Some other options you can do is reduced boiling, where you're not boiling it all the way down to a pure syrup, but just getting out some of that water content to make it a little bit more sugary. And you can use that product to prime a kombucha. There's operations that use it to prime yeast for making beers or breads or ciders and things like that. So really anything that involves a sugar content that can have a little bit of water in it, you can really use maple sap to create that product. So your limitations are none. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today and learning all about how you can tap maples here in the Intermountain West and in Utah. Again, I'm Patrick Kelly, Director of Education at Stokes Nature Center.
And I'm Michelle Sagers, our Community Programs Coordinator. Thanks for joining us today and happy tapping out there.